Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. Today's guest is an award-winning author all the way from the US. His name is James Robertson. Welcome to the show, James. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. How's everything been with you?
Good, thank you, sir. Very good, very good.
That's good.
Excited to ask you some questions. Always great to have a author on the show,
Yeah,
and yeah, I mean it's kind of the perfect time to interview you as well because your a lot of your books are very kind of, I suppose, horror themed, October kind
yeah,
of horror themed.
yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, couldn't be better really. Man, there's various different ways I could begin this, but I think the first thing I want to start with is obviously being an award-winning author. So talk to us a little bit about that. Like, what was the award? How did you win it? What was, talk us through that.
Oh, sure. Well, first you got to write a book, so there's that
That
aspect.
helps it.
But then after that, you just pick a. There's multiple awards that go on, and
Mm,
different authors can sign up for whatever contest is going on. I signed up for a couple, and one I got shortlisted with was Chanticleer, I want to say is how you
mm,
pronounce it. So I got shortlisted with them, and then the one I actually won on was it's called the Wishing Shelf Awards, which is a little indie award that they just started a couple years back, I think. So they're pretty nice people there. So their process is a little different than most. They actually send it out to a group of people. Like I think there was like 15 or 16 people that read my book with them. And so each person would rate the cover and then the book and then like the prose, I guess, and then just whatever else they had. And then it kind of gets averaged all together is how that worked. So I kind of like their process though, because you get more of a group instead of like, because
mm.
sometimes one person will just be like, I don't like the book or whatever, but then you'll have a bigger group, and the average, I think,
So,
is gives people a better idea. So.
so you might get someone that's like, hate the book, but the cover, oh my God,
Yeah,
that cover
yeah.
art. That's the salvage right there.
Yeah, which was actually funny at the time. I did my own cover at that point, so it wasn't as good as it is now. I like the new covers. The guy I work with, Oleg Beloded on Fiverr, he does great work. So
Since we're creeping more into the sort of the marketing side of the things, how much would you say, or to what extent does the cover art and also the award? Because I know, obviously, the reason why you put award winning, sounds better. It's why wouldn't you celebrate that? It makes sense. If you
right.
hear that, you're like, oh, cool, excellent, an award winning author. This is definitely someone I should at least consider reading books
Mm-hmm.
from. But talk to us a little bit about the marketing side of things. Like, have you noticed a shift as far as numbers or interest since you started, changing up your art to be more professional? And of course, when you added this or you included this tagline of an award-winning author, did that actually change your viewership? Did it increase more interest? Did you get more, I don't know, feedback? Like, talk us through
Hmm.
that.
I'm unsure, honestly. Like I well, let me clarify that. I'm unsure which had the better
Okay.
impact, whether it was the cover or the just a combination of the two, since I kind of combined them on that first book there. But yeah, it definitely had an impact, I would say, especially I would say the cover probably a little more than the award, just because people are really like, if you have like some sort of art that like draws you into the story, gives you an idea of what's really going on instead of something generic or that you're like, oh, what's going on here, then that can really draw people in, because people say don't judge a book by a cover, but everyone does. So.
Yeah,
uh,
I've always said that. I mean, I understand what where that comes from. Obviously, it means regarding a person, but it's a bit of a silly thing to apply to books, really, because it's like that is literally your first impression.
Yes,
You know what I mean? Like the reality is, if bookshops, or even shopping online, that's the very first thing you see, and without any kind of previous information about something, I mean, it's the only starting point, really. I suppose the blurb to some extent helps, but
yeah.
You need a good initial visual to
Yeah, and I think that gives the people the idea as well. Like if your cover's more professional, then they'll take the work more seriously as well. They'll expect it'll be better than if it was just like some bland tossed together cover. So
do you apply the same mindset to pricing? I mean, I know a lot of the time with pricing, especially for books, it's about how much it costed to make and produce
yeah, I mean, I don't want to outprice myself, but I don't want to make it seem like it's cheap, I guess you could say. So I try to keep my prices pretty low. I have the ebooks at like $4.99, and then the paperbacks at $14.99. Now the next book I'll have to put up at least for the paperback, because it's going to be a longer one. I'm expecting it to be like 500 to 700, who knows how many pages. It's going to be a long book, so so that'll definitely have to be considered in the cost of things. So
let's take it back to the beginning. For you as a writer, like what actually inspired you to become a writer? Like where did the initial inspiration come from, and also like what inspired you to actually pursue this?
Well, initially I would have to say that I don't know really. I've always been pretty creative though, like a very imaginative person, I guess you could say. I did a little creative writing when I was younger, just on my own, not with like being told to do anything. And I guess I enjoyed it back then. And then just one day I just was like, well, let's write a book. I guess I don't even remember my thought process at the time, because I started my first book like 10 years ago, I want to say. And then I went to school, and so it kind of got put on held and on hold, I guess. And from there, I picked it back up after I graduated. I wasn't planning on doing it, but my dad broke his hip, so I had to go help him, and so I had some downtime there, and I was like, well, I got this on my hard drive from years ago. So and then I just picked it back up.
So like how many years were there between when you started that and then when you picked it up again?
I want to say about 8, somewhere in there. So yeah, I did like the first 3 chapters, those 10 years ago or whenever, and then obviously edited them up and changed a little bit, and then just finished the story. So yeah.
So 8 years, obviously a lot changes, or a lot changes in 6 months, let alone 8 years.
Yeah.
So you come back to it, like, is your mindset with how you approach it totally different? Like what did you learn in that time that made it possible to then do that book that maybe wouldn't have been possible beforehand?
I mean, I don't want to say it wasn't possible back then. It's just not something I was dedicated to at the time. Where in this time I had just nothing going on besides trying to help him out. And so then I just picked it up, and the things that changed were obviously my view being, I want to say, more well versed in writing and literature in general, I guess. And then as grown as a person as well. So I would take out some things I thought were kind of silly and just replace them and edit it to where it was more serious toned, I guess. So
right, I'm going to ask you what might seem like a silly question.
Okay.
Bear with me on this.
Right.
As a writer, what do you think is more important? Do you think it's more important to be really well versed I suppose in like literary devices, and have a really clear understand, like do a lot of studying into the field of writing? Or do
Mhm.
you think it's much more important, perhaps? I know it sounds like a leading question, it's not. Is it maybe more important to just have good ideas, for stories and stuff like that? Like what would you say is more important? And for you as a writer specifically, what do you lean on more?
For me, it's more the story aspect, because I mean, obviously I had to take some just like basic English classes in college. I don't know what the names of them were. Just like the standard gen eds. And then like I think I did like one creative course of some sort. But I actually didn't major in writing or literature. It's just something that I've come to do. So I think creativity is more important than just the know-how. There's a lot of tools that you can use that can help you with the other side, and then there's also editors and people that'll read your books before you publish them and stuff like that, so that really helps. And then I don't really plot my books, so I'm not someone who is like has to make a flow chart or anything like that. So I just kind of write off the cuff, and the story takes its own turns in that way. So
Who or where do you take inspiration from? So do you sort of base this on, I don't know, stories from your life, stories that you've read from other authors? I mean, where do you draw your inspiration from, and who inspired you to get into this?
okay, that's a good question. I would say it's a combination. Some of I would say most of the characters draw from myself. Um, at least little bits and pieces. I mean, I think a lot of authors do that.
Mm.
And then but there's if you want like a writer in specific that I've kind of adore, who has inspired me, I guess. I guess it'd have to be Stephen King, which I'm sure a lot of people say that, but I like the darker aspects, the more gray characters and gray areas, which is what I kind of try to do with my writing. People that seem good may not be that good, and people that seem bad may not be that bad. Now,
Mm.
obviously, there's some people on those spectrums that are really good or really bad, but for the majority of my characters, I like to keep it for the reader to kind of moralize which way they want to lean at seeing the person. So
Yeah, obviously there's been more of a shift towards that in more recent years, both in movies and um, in books, hasn't there? Even in, for instance, professional wrestling, things like that. It's like you don't really have this kind of classic good guy, bad guy dynamic. Like you do, but even if
mhm.
you do have a bad guy, for instance, the movie Joker was a really good example of that. The sympathetic villain, so to speak.
Yeah.
Do you think it's generally then more effective to just have these kind of characters that are shades of black and white as opposed to just full on black and white? Or do you think it's an attempt to be more realistic?
Yeah, I think that's where because my story's based in like a sort of present day. Although it takes its, because it's like I guess I should go into it a little bit. It's like uh my idea for the story originally was when I was going through like deciding if religion was true or not, and if the gods existed, I guess you could say.
So
And
I'll just cut
so
in really quickly. So
yeah,
you've got two books here. So is this Afterworld you're referring to?
yes,
Okay.
that's the first one, Afterworld. So from there I came up with this idea of a question I haven't really heard people ask, is what if the gods are lying to us? So
Ooh.
yeah, so that's kind of where the story comes from. And uh yeah, from there, that's where that happened. And yeah, I don't know, it kind of spiraled from there, that question, and then yeah.
And obviously, without ruining the story, like what's your kind of what can you tell us about that book, maybe without giving things away? What can you tell
just
us?
like just like the overarching like idea around it, or a little more into it, or
Anything you can tell us, sell us this idea. I'd like to explore this a little bit.
okay, so well, so the character, I guess that's not really a spoiler. So he dies at the beginning of the book.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So and then he goes into this next life, the afterworld, I guess you could call it. And then he starts learning that things on the other side aren't as great as people make it out to be.
Mm.
There's a lot going on. Like he meets like different people, creatures, and it's none of the gods like that he was taught on this earth it actually exist. They were written by those other gods for a purpose, and yeah.
Often with stories like this, obviously you mentioned that where your initial inspiration comes from, as far as that sometimes it'll be from you, sometimes it'll be from things you've read. This to me sounds like something where you've read a lot into certain things about this. So like, is there research preparation that you've done for this particular book that's kind of helped you to develop this narrative, or perhaps just areas of interest that you have that have inspired this story?
I mean, obviously I looked into a little bit of like religion and some of their philosophies and what traditions, I guess you could say. One part of the book, they discuss like because the reason the gods lie, and that's not really a spoiler. It's at the prologue, so I'm not. I'll go that far into it. It's their goal is to create warriors, and so if you look at like religions like say the Norse gods, they're the reason people fought was to get into Valhalla. And then there's a lot of war and conflict between the Christian religion and the Muslim religion, fighting over the Holy Lands. And then even with monks, there's they train themselves for
Mm.
spiritual wisdom, is what they call it, but it's still training themselves for combat. So that's kind of, if you want to go into the research aspects, that's kind of something I construed together between them, and yeah. But the big research book was the second one, since it was more of a I tried to add a lot of historical fiction into that
Is
as well.
this
So yeah.
is this a sequel to Afterworld? Is that what you're
um
referring to?
it's a sequel prequel, if that makes sense.
So what's the name of the book?
The Ripper is the second one.
It's the one I
um
got here. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
so because I wanted to create a character that has a that doesn't just end, and so obviously trying to construe it within our reality, in our world, I chose Jack the Ripper because no one knows what happened to him, or so I could use his backstory and then like weave him into the story as uh he was a fun character to write. But the as I was saying, the research aspect, because I had to keep it within a timeline. And as I was saying, I don't like to do that when I'm writing. I kind of just go where the story flows. But with that one, I had his certain dates that he would kill someone, and this other stuff. I had to kind of write in between those lines and make explanations up for why that was, and how we would see that, and why it would be different from what happened, I guess.
So one thing I was pretty intrigued by, just looking at your website and your books and everything, you've got basically books planned up and scheduled as far as 2026.
Yeah, well, it's an epic series, so I'm thinking like 20 books, 15 to
Wow.
20, yes. It's gonna be a few years in the making.
Okay.
It's a big story to tell, so yeah,
Okay,
expect
so
for
this series has got legs then. I mean, I suppose the best question to ask you is timing wise, and how do you sort of find the time to, like, how are you writing so quickly? Because I understand that generally speaking, when you're writing a book, it's a long and arduous process, you know. And I mean, as you mentioned before, you're doing research, you're doing these different things, as well as actually doing the writing and the thinking about it. And sometimes, you know, you get the classic writer's block, or you hit an idea and you have to wait on a while before you come up with the way to further the story and whatnot. So, like,
Mhm.
talk to us a little bit about your, I suppose, your approach as far as writing these books. Like, how are you completing them so quickly?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's quickly. I do my best. I think my goal is to get a book out each year, which I think that's a good goal for someone writing in this kind of fantasy. Because you gotta keep your plot points together and try to tie those up well. But honestly, I just as I said, I ride off the cuff, and usually that does me very well. And then well, not obviously, but I do take inspiration from dreams I have and stuff like that. So if I ever get like writer's block or something, I have like a notepad full of like different like wild dreams I've had, so I can just throw an element in from there and kind of progress the story that way. So I guess that kind of helps with the writer's block situation. The thing that's draining my time is I'm working on the audiobook versions,
Mm.
and I'm making them full cast narrations with sound effects and everything. And as a single person, that is a lot of work to do. Even hiring out voice actors, the editing process itself, just that's a time sink. So
Yeah, I can imagine that must take a lot of time. Yeah, talk to us a little bit about your process just for writing a book in general. So, you know, obviously, I mean, I'm not going to profess to be an expert on this, but I do know of like the free point arc, as they call it, which is the basic kind of idea that you have a beginning, middle, and an end, and ideally you work from your ending backwards. So you already have your finish in mind, and you're working backwards to kind of create a narrative that logically makes sense and builds in a
yeah.
logical manner. But everyone does it differently. So, what's your process for writing a book?
Well, I have big plot points. So I'll have those plot points. And then as I'm writing, another big plot point may come along in my mind, and I'll be like, oh, so I just jot that down literally below my text where I'm writing, just so I can like go back and look at it and be like, okay, so how am I going to work this in? But I don't start that way, but it does come to be where I have some things to tie in. Not a lot, because usually it's within the same chapter that those ideas are. But every once in a while, I'll have something. Oh, I need to do this for later. Like if someone mentions something, a reference something, I have to kind of like explain that a later part. Or yeah, so. But I just sit down and write, I guess. And unless it needs the research like that last book, it usually goes smoothly. So usually.
So, like,
uh
on average, how long would you say it takes you to write a book?
if I'm just writing, I try to do like 1,000 to 3,000 words a day when I'm writing. Maybe take a couple days off a week, but so to get to the length I was at, I guess that'd be like if you want to go, we'll just say 1,500 for.
Hmm.
Uh, let's do a calculator real quick. So the first story was, I think, 96,000 words before its edits. So 1,500. That's about 64 days before the editing process, but that's just the raw script, so or the manuscript, I guess you say. But so yeah, I mean that's over 2 months. So, and then you still have the book cover to figure out what you want to do with, and
Mm.
then get your readers and edits. The editing process takes a while, so yeah. So if I wanted to rush for just a short book like that, I guess you call it short. It's only like 300 pages. So I could probably get one out in half a year, but I don't like to rush. I like to be able to go back and just make sure everything is right. And I'll put it down for a while and then come back to it again. So
Are you self-publishing all of these books, or do you have like a distributor or someone that you're working with, something like that?
I self-publish,
Mm.
so all the marketing, the cover design, and everything like that's on me. So that's a big chunk of time there. So yeah, that's I was using Drafted Digital, which they're a great company. Their customer service is outstanding there. But I did find a lifetime deal for Publish Drive, and I can publish up to 32 books with them, but they count each version of a book as a book. So it's or I guess it's 96, which I went to like I say it's 32. So 32 total because you got your paperback, your audiobook, and then your ebook version. So and they give you 100% of the royalties instead of taking a cut that way. So that's
You mentioned, yeah, editions and versions. So obviously you do second editions of your books and whatnot.
mhm.
So what exactly is included in these second editions? Like, are you?
Well, the second editions were the new covers with a little bit more like editing. I just went back through and checked punctuation and stuff mostly on those. So but that was the big thing for the second edition was the new covers because I don't know if you saw the old ones or not, but on the website there's actually a slider on the book pages that'll show you like the old versus new covers, so you can
Mm.
kind of see the difference there.
Have you considered? Obviously, I mentioned. Well, I asked you about, if you're self-published or not, and you obviously said that. And I'm just wondering, have you approached major publishers? If not, why? And also, do you think you'll approach perhaps, I don't know, companies like Netflix, for example, to take this medium into visual medium in some shape or form?
So I never actually sent out a letter to any publishers or agents. The reason I chose not to is it can take a while. And then also I would lose like control. Like I'd still have my rights, but I'd lose control like over book covers and like
Mm.
they may want me to cut aspects of the book out. Like I know Stephen King even had to do that for The Stand, and he didn't want to do that. So I don't want to ever be in that position where they're telling me what to do with my work to have it published with them. So I just decided to do it on my own. So, but as far as the approaching Netflix or someone, eventually, sure. But I want to get it out there to where there's enough material that they don't have to finish the series on their own. I'm sure you know what I'm
Mm.
talking about. The little Game of Thrones there. But so yeah, I don't want that to happen. So I'm conservative about that aspect and will wait until I have at least a good chunk of story out.
I think that's sensible. Yeah, because otherwise you're putting unnecessary pressure on yourself. Like, I mean, it happened to J.K. Rowling when she started doing the Harry Potter series. Of course, like, she was miles ahead, but still there was pressure on her to release those new books. I think because she did the first three initially, and the first movie came out, and then she started. I think she did fourth and the fifth one. And I remember there was a lot of, I don't know how to put, like, I remember the fifth one, the Order of the Phoenix, the book. There was
Mhm.
a lot of buzz when that came out, and a lot of, I suppose, pressure past that point to just get the rest of them finished and
Yeah.
released. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from. And of course, Game of Thrones is the best example because the author never actually, and still to this day, I believe, has not finished
No, it has.
those books. And of course, the problem with that, yeah, is if you do turn it into a TV show. And we saw, I mean, well, I've spoken on the show about this before, so I'll sum this up really quickly. But Game of Thrones, the TV show, that flopped because of lazy writing. That was just
Mhm.
laziness. And it's,
Yep.
you know, like I said before, they were offered 2 more seasons. They were offered to
Mhm.
go up to as far as season 10. The showrunners decided, no, we don't want to. We want to end it. We want to take on these other projects that we're being offered money for.
Yeah.
And they did. And the final season sucked. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the problem as well. It's like, and this is why I respect your decision because I mean, in my mind, I was kind of thinking like this, particularly this Afterworld book has a lot of legs. I can see this making a very good series, if not that, a movie. Definitely, there's definitely legs for it. And, you know, we've seen similar-esque kind of stories that kind of reminded a bit of Constantine a little bit.
Mhm.
Just as far as you know the concept is concerned, but it makes sense to just have, yeah, at least have your ending done, finished,
Yeah.
out there, and then yeah.
Then they can, yeah, shouldn't be able to mess it up too bad from there.
Plus I suppose in a way it puts pressure on even further because if you were to then release, let's say the TV or movie version is released before the ending is released in the books, then you're automatically compare. I mean, obviously, film and movies are always compared anyway, and typically the story is that the books are always better. But if the if the TV or movie version comes out first, then that's what you're going to be compared to, and
Yeah.
potentially your ending could not stand up to the book or the sorry, to the movie or the film. So movie or the film, movie or the show, and then you know, then it makes you look bad. So I suppose it's better to just have it done, completed first, and then you know
Yeah.
whatever happens after that happens. But
Yep.
yeah, fair enough, fair enough. One thing I wanted to ask you about is because naturally, any writer, any artist of any type, creative of any type, experiences criticism from time to time. Have you had any major criticisms? If so, you know, what can you share with us? What did you learn from it? Was it fair? Was it reasonable? Talk to us about criticism a little bit.
um uh I mean, I've had fair criticism. Like I was saying in that award, they didn't like the cover. So I mean, criticism is good as long as it's fair criticism, I guess you could say. Because it helps you improve. Like you'll see something and you'll be like, yeah, I guess I could fix that and improve on that aspect of what I'm doing. So I don't see it as a bad thing. I see it as a way to improve as long as it's again fair and it makes sense. Like if it's just, oh, this book sucks, then what are you supposed to do with that, you know? But yeah, I don't know.
Since you've been writing for a while, what advice do you think you could give to aspiring writers?
Um, let's see. Write the story your way. Don't write it on the way you perceive people will want to read something. I know a lot of authors will do that just to sell books, but if you want to do that, that's fine. But if you want to be creative, then definitely write the story your way and don't like do please the audience. Please yourself and you'll please those that like your work genuinely. So I think that's the best advice I can give. Because I
Yeah.
actually saw someone on Reddit. He asked a question. He's like, "Should I change this up in my?" Because people don't seem to be reacting to my story. Should I just basically he said, should I do what they want? It's not really your art at that point.
Yeah, I
So
agree. I agree
yeah,
totally.
yeah,
Yeah, you got to go with your vision because, and there's ways you can do this as well. So, like, for example, this What If series that Marvel has done, which is not a new concept, it's been thrown around in comics for many, many years, but it's a brilliant device because you've already got your definitive story, which has already been written. This is how it is. This is the story. But then you can do alternate versions. You can
yeah,
do like, well, what if this would happen? Or, it's the same character, but the circumstances are different, or whatever the case may be. And that I think is a much better way of doing it because then you don't have to compromise on your ideas. You can still have your story the way you want it, but then you can also take inspiration from what your readers are saying and kind of use their ideas,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's still got to kind of fall in line with what you like as well. Like just because your audience says we want this doesn't mean that you should necessarily release that. I mean,
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? It's like you can't please everyone all of the time. It's just
right.
yeah.
That was kind of my idea behind that. The ones who will like it, and if you change something, someone else will hate it. So it's just go with what you want to do, and that'll be the best for everyone, I think.
So your educational background includes a bachelor's degree in political science with a theatre minor and an associate's
Yes.
degree in information network technology. So, what were the key things that you learned or took away from university and those degrees?
Well, I guess I used to play games a lot, and I was like always on the computer, so that's where the information technology degree came from. Um, and I don't know, I decided I didn't want to uh pursue that as much. I still do like little house calls here and there for someone. I was working with a lady and helped set up her network printers and stuff, which was pretty simple for me, so it wasn't too much. So but overall I was like, I don't really want to just sit in an office all day and wait for tickets to come in to fix something, because that's what the majority of IT jobs are, besides running a little cable here and there. But it's like it's not really something I want to do. So I was like, all right, let me so I took a few years off, and then I went to school in New York here, um, and initially went in for political or for theater, and switched out of that to political science, because I wanted to get involved, which I still try to do, like voting drives and stuff like that every once in a while. But I think the theater was I really enjoyed theater. I'm not
Mm.
gonna lie. And I actually do a few voices in my audiobooks, so I kind of draw from that, I guess you could say, while doing those. But yeah, I guess the all of that together has led me to where I am. So I guess there's not really one thing in particular that has helped with my books, but all together. Because the political science side, I got a lot of look into philosophy and stuff, which definitely helps write these more complex stories and of different factions, which you'll see in Afterworld and the books following. So yeah.
And so are you full-time a full-time author now then? Is that
Uh well, that's the goal. I still have a side job, but
what were you doing on the side to keep things going?
well, I just do the house calls for the IT stuff, and then just I just whatever, honestly, just odd jobs here and there. I'm also after I finish this audiobook, I'm thinking of doing like starting my own like Fiverr and trying to
Mm.
do like a narration, and also beta reading. I was just gonna do that too. So I think a lot of people need beta readers. So it's And it's not a lot of money, but it helps someone out and help myself out at the same time. So
So IT is an area that I often, all my friends that I've had over the years that have worked in IT seem to have like these different horror stories. Do you have any like IT horror stories? Any difficult
um
situations you've been in with other colleagues and stuff?
I guess I can throw this kid under the bus.
Throw away.
It was when I was doing my internship actually to finish my degree. The I don't know why he did this, but he like stacked like boxes of computers and carried them up some stairs and basically just dropped them all. I was just like, what? So that's my biggest horror story. That's just more of a why would you do that kind of
So,
thing.
as far as cost is concerned, how much damage did he?
I,
What's the bill afterwards?
as far as I know, they still work somehow. I don't know how, but so he lucked out. I still don't
Ooh.
know why he did that though. It was just me and this other kid were just like, why?
When
But
it comes to writing or just life goals in general, do you have any sort of life goals, aspirations, anything major that you're aiming to achieve?
just to become a full-time author. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's slow starting up. People say you don't start to make a profit until your third book is out.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
so because you have to advertise and then people will buy your first book or whichever one you're advertising, but then they'll usually buy your backlog. So it'll help cover the advertisement costs when you do that. So they say don't really advertise it ads too much before then. So that's something I try to do unless I'm running like a sell. Like right now I'll have some Facebook ads to throw people over to my Ripper book. Since it's Halloween, I decided to do a 99-cent sell for that, but
Do you
otherwise you just
go
yeah.
on? Go
Oh,
on.
go ahead. No, you're fine.
You're fine. You're fine. You're good.
I was just gonna say, other than that, yeah, you just gotta keep doing what you're doing. You'll definitely eat a lot of costs initially between covers and if you want to do the audiobook, even if you don't do a full cast, it'll cost a lot. But with the full cast, you'll either need a lot of money. Well, it still costs a lot of money, but you'll need that and you'll need even more money
Mm.
or a lot of time like I'm doing right now with the uh doing the edits myself, which has taken months and still I'm trying to get it out before the end of the year. I wanted to have it out this month, but with everything else going on, moving and stuff, I was just like, I'm just gonna try for the end of the year and see. hopefully. So
Um, what I was going to ask is, have you had much success with Facebook advertising at all?
um, I, I mean, I've gotten followers from it. But I sales wise, I'm unsure because like I'll get a lot of clicks, but how much those translate into sales versus the book blogs and stuff I'm sending it to is kind of in the air. I can't really give you a metric that way. So I do get clicks though. So my covers are doing their job, I guess.
And yeah, this is something I found that pretty interesting. So you've lived in Kansas, Texas, Missouri, and New York, which I just found really interesting because you often hear about how big America is and how, I mean, I remember hearing some crazy statistic many years ago about how supposedly 80% of Americans didn't own a passport, which blew my mind. But then thinking about it, it makes sense
Yeah.
because even just traveling from state to state can, well, take tens of hours or
Yeah.
hours and hours and hours. It makes sense. And sometimes you can obviously travel the width of it just to state. I think like Texas, for instance, it takes you like 10 hours, 13
Yeah.
hours each way. It's crazy. But I wanted to ask you, like, how do all of these states compare? Because the way I've always seen America is it's kind of like 50, 51 different countries, really. You know, every
Mm.
state is like totally different with everything from culture, weather conditions, terrain, economy, political standpoints, etc. What are the key differences? How do all these states compare in terms of just sort of like day-to-day living?
Um, I think what you said is true for the most part. One thing I'm gonna say is I don't think the cultures are all that different, which is
Okay.
sad, and I think that's why
Hmm.
the that's why it's a sad statistic, like you said, 80%. If that's what it is, don't
I
own a
mean,
passport. Then they're
this, yeah, I heard this like
yeah.
tens of years ago. I don't know if
I,
this is
I
true.
mean, it's probably pretty true. So, um, but we as a country majority don't really get to experience other cultures, so we're kind of, they call it a mixing pot here, but we're also stuck in our own ways and don't, I think we lose a lot of empathy without being able to see other cultures and people from over there, where that's where I think a lot of this nationalism comes from in America
Okay.
especially. um but as for the weather and stuff, it's definitely super hot in Texas. The South in general is hot, so I try to. That was during like second grade, I think I lived there. It wasn't bad. I enjoyed it for the most part. It was just really hot. Kansas and Missouri are right next to each other, so there's not too much of a difference there. Kansas is flat though,
Mm.
so it's, you really won't even get maybe like a 10-foot hill. That's about it. Missouri's nice. They got a lot of foliage there. If you want something in the central states, like that, as long as you're uh looking to live somewhere around there, then yeah, I think that's something that's all right. And then uh they still don't have that much nature. Like they have a bit, but they don't really have mountains there too much.
Mm.
So that's why I like New York, is because it's not super hot. I mean, it snows here, but if you can deal with that, you get the Great Lake here, you get the ocean if you want to go that way, and then you get the mountains and the hiking and everything else, and the trees are beautiful. So I like New York the best, if you couldn't tell. So, but the other states are fine. Just it depends what you want, I guess. So yeah.
Living in has living in all these different places impacted your writing in any way or profoundly affected your life, your mindset, anything like that?
um, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it has, but I couldn't give you a direct example.
Mm.
But yes.
Fair enough. Fair enough. What's the biggest life lesson that you've learned so far?
Hmm. Hmm. I don't know. I try to stay positive and don't give up. Um, I think people need to hear that. Just don't give up, no matter what's bothering you or what you're struggling with. If things aren't going great right now, just, I think as long as you keep working towards your goal, it'll eventually come into a fruition. Yeah, fruition. So, uh, yeah, I think that's about the biggest life goal slash advice in one I can give.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you for sharing. And
Yeah.
as we draw things to a close for today, do you have any upcoming projects or maybe some final thoughts that you'd like to leave with the listeners?
Projects. The third book I'm going to try to get out by the end of next year. And the audiobooks for the first and second, I'm going to try to get out before then. So those are the projects. But other than that, if you want to join the newsletter or the check out the blog, then and sometimes my uh Twitter, which is at next James Robert, then um, yeah, I usually post what I'm up to there. So
Excellent. Well, I want to say a massive thank you for being on the show, and yeah, I wish you all the best with your writing career.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It was a great talk. Pretty nice. So
Thank you,
I
sir.
yeah.
And
I invite
yeah,
anyone else who wants to join your show for a nice time. So
I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
yeah.
Thank you. To everyone listening to the Christian Reeve podcast, thank you for listening as always. Be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.